Welcome everybody to our next theme. My name is Vanessa and we are here at Rekla Learning Studios learning more about Finnish education. And this week we will be focusing on lesson planning. I've had several comments from viewers that asked about lesson planning, not only in the grades level, but also in the preschool level. So this lesson planning session will focus on the grades level, and we're going to move from objectives or learning outcomes to curiosity, which will then promote deeper learning. So what if lesson planning didn't start with what we teach or what to teach, the content, but rather why students might care? If we switched our mind process thinking to what sparks curiosity and how can I connect this lesson to my student's life? This single shift in mindset from transmission to discovery. So instead of the teacher imparting that information, but giving the student an opportunity to discover, can revolutionize how students experience learning. It's not about adding complexity, but about rethinking where the journey begins. Finland has consistently ranked among the world's top education systems, not by teaching more content or longer school hours, but by teaching differently. Finnish educators plan for thinking, not memorizing. Their approach recognizes that students learn best when they are exploring ideas through hands-on discovery, choosing their own path to understanding, collaborating with peers to construct meaning, and reflecting on their learning process. If you are one of my viewers that is in the CBC system, this also has the same setup. CBC is very much a part of Finnish education in that it simply unlocks its full potential with Finnish education connected to CBC. When we embrace the approach, learning becomes an active exploration for the students rather than just sitting and listening to the teacher, absorbing passively. So let's shift. As a teacher, let's shift from what will I teach today, the content, to what will students discover? This question repositions students as the intellectual drivers of learning. They have agency, they have autonomy, they have intrinsic motivation to learn, which minimizes behavior issues in the classroom. It shifts planning from scripted lessons to designing experiences or just a basic outline. So instead of having all those details planned out in your lesson, you come to class with a general outline, providing the students opportunities to participate and choose the learning direction that they wish to go. This fundamental shift transforms learning from teacher-centered transmission to student-led discovery. It's not about doing less as a teacher. It's about designing conditions where students do more of the cognitive work, building deeper understanding through active engagement. So instead of following the Finnish education and thinking, oh, this is going to be more work for me, in the end, it actually gives you less work because you are giving that work responsibility to the students. And it is your job as a teacher to just guide them and facilitate, give opportunities for them to learn. So we have 4 core principles in our lessons. 1, it always starts with curiosity. Every lesson begins with a spark, a hook, a question, an inquiry scenario, right? That initial moment where we pull the students in to curiosity and wonder. Then we provide the students opportunities to explore. Notice that I don't immediately shift to teaching or imparting information. Step 2 is allowing the students to explore in this area that they have just received the hook or the question, and now they're curious. So this is the best time to be using their curiosity to explore through stations, through hands-on activities, through outdoor exploration. Then we have flexible paths. So this is the choice that we're talking about. It's not something that they do at the end of the lesson. This is like the main part of the lesson. They're choosing. It's a learning tool. Students select from multiple methods, tools, collaborative roles, and final products. You can use choice boards for this or many other tools that are out there. This flexibility respects diverse learning preferences and builds student agency. It also allows for differentiation. So again, instead of a teacher having more work, we're creating less work because now the students who are struggling, they will approach the lesson from their abilities. The students that have a more advanced educational understanding, they will approach it with a more complex understanding. But in the end, they will both learn outcomes that the teacher has hoped to create, but they've done it in their own way on their own path. And of course, reflection is built in throughout the lesson. It's not optional. It's not an add-on. It's not an end of unit activity. It's woven throughout the lesson as a critical learning tool, because without reflection, those light bulbs don't go on. The dots don't get connected in all of these different facts and figures that they are learning. So we want them to reflect and connect those dots and turn on those light bulbs. So what does the Finnish-style lesson plan actually look like? A Finnish lesson plan is refreshingly concise. It's intentionally flexible and relentlessly thinking focused. Rather than scripting every minute, it designs a learning arc that responds to students' needs in real time. So we start again with a spark or a curiosity trigger, a hook, a question, an image, a sound maybe that they listen to, or a scenario a mystery scenario that they need to solve. This pulls the students in. Then we give them opportunity to explore while they are curious. Then we have a reflection. So this is where the teacher will take a few moments to find out where the students are at. The learning outcomes are there, focusing the lesson. So the teacher can look at the learning outcomes. These are the things I want my student to be able to do at the end of this lesson. So let's reflect and find out where they're at with their exploration. How much did they learn on their own, right? At that point, then the teacher can address any gaps or confusion, uncertainty, misconceptions, and bring them back to focusing on those learning outcomes. Then we're going to apply, right? This is where they now dig in and put to work what they have learned. So now they have to think about, okay, this is what I was curious about. This is what I've explored and learned. So now how can I show that I have learned this? So this part is where teachers, again, have less work, because instead of creating quizzes and exams and worksheets, this is where students are creating their own artifacts to show their learning. So then the teacher simply has those artifacts. They can go in the portfolios, they can be presented to administration or to parents, so that the students have shown that they understand. The teacher simply collects those artifacts and has them for records. Not necessary for quizzes or exams. And then reflection. So at the end, we also want the students to articulate what they have learned, what strategies worked, and where they still have questions. So keep in mind, a reflection time is not a review. We're not simply asking the students to spit back at you what they have learned factually. We want the process, we want the confusion, we want the resolution that the students went through, the thinking process, making thinking visible. That's what we're doing in this step. This metacognitive step solidifies the understanding. So the teacher adapts throughout based on what students show they need, not a predetermined script. The responsive approach honors both learning science and individual student readiness. So let's dive into an example, and I will show you, walk through with you what a Finnish lesson might look like. Let's try, for example, math, grade 4. We're going to focus on fractions. So the learning outcome will be understanding fractions through concrete modeling and comparison. This lesson will demonstrate how abstract mathematical concepts become tangible and meaningful through exploration. Rather than beginning with definitions and rules, students encounter fractions as they naturally exist in real objects, comparisons, and everyday situations. All right, so let's go in. The spark. Here's our curiosity. We're going to display several plates with fruit cut into different fractional parts, halves, quarters, thirds. Some plates have more pieces, others have larger pieces. And the question is, which plate has more fruit and why do you think so? All right, so now in small groups, the students are going to take their plates, 2 or 3 plates each, and they're going to decide together which one has more and why. And they're going to debate, they're going to discuss, they're going to justify their thinking. Some will focus on the number of pieces, others will focus on the size of the pieces. So you have a cognitive dissonance created that is a perfect entry point for exploring fractions. Next, we will move into the exploration stations. So this is where there'll be several stations set up in the classroom, and the students will move from one station to the next in small groups. They can explore with station 1 by building fractions, creating models using bottle caps, craft sticks, paper strips. They move to station 2 where they're comparing. So they can compare real or drawn fraction plates, justifying their reasoning, which is larger, how do you know, practicing their mathematical thinking. Station 3 will be a match it, where they can match real life objects such as chocolate bars, oranges, or ribbons to fractional labels, connecting the abstract notion, this label 2/3, with an actual chocolate bar, right? Or at Christmas time where I live, they have these orange chocolates that look like an orange, but they're made of chocolate slices, right? So you can put a chocolate orange there and they can see 2/3. And then finally, station 4, where they can create a challenge. So here they're going to be challenging their peers to see how well their peers are learning. This is fun because it creates a little bit of competition because they want to see how well their friends are learning, and then they can use it to support their friends if they don't understand. All right, so making learning visible. This is visible thinking. After exploration, students choose one application task to demonstrate their understanding. Choice increases engagement and allows students to play to their strengths, right? So you could have a fraction market plate, designing a fruit plate showing specific fractions, labeling each section, and explaining their choice in writing. You could do a fraction story sketch, where they draw and write a short story where fractions solve a problem. You could try the fraction card design, where they create a set of fraction comparison cards with visual and correct notations, and then they can test their partners. Then we have a fraction comparing poster, where they visually create a poster showing how fractions compare with clear justifications for each relationship. These tasks require minimal materials but demand deep conceptual understanding. Students can't complete them by rote memory. They must actually comprehend what fractions mean. We have our reflection point here, where the teacher is observing Asking questions, what strategies helped you compare fraction sizes? What still feels unclear? What surprised you about fractions? The teacher then can look at what the students are sharing with them, and she can decide to have them have more time in the stations. Maybe she needs to clarify some things so she can go to the board and do a large group session, keeping in mind the time that she spends lecturing or teaching is based on our age plus 2 rule. So if you're not familiar with this rule, for example, in grade 1, most kids are 6 years old. So the longest a teacher should be teaching, where she's the one doing all the talking, is 6 plus 2. So 8 minutes is the max amount of time that she should be teaching and doing all the talking. All right. So again, this is a responsive teaching in action moment. Instructions adapt to actual student needs revealed through reflection, not on pacing guides. All right, one more example, just in case you're still not sure how this goes. Let's do grade 6, a descriptive writing topic. Here we want the students to be able to use sensory language to describe a place with vivid detail. Strong descriptive writing emerges from careful observation and sensory awareness. Rather than teaching students a list of good describing words, this lesson helps them discover language through authentic sensory experiences, right? So they find the words themselves. All right, so the spark to get the lesson started is to maybe play a short audio clip. Forest sounds with birds and rustling leaves, a gentle rain on different surfaces. Students can close their eyes and listen carefully and then answer the question, what did you imagine? What did you see, smell, and feel in this place? Students can share quick impressions. They can, the room fills with varied responses, right? From seeing a cabin to a jungle path, and they can just share all these different ideas, and students will begin to listen. Oh, I didn't think of that, right? And they're hearing all their other peers and what they heard. So it creates diversity in how we perceive sensory images in our mind. All right, so then we move to our stations, our discovery area or our exploration time. So students, again, will be in small groups. They'll rotate through the stations designed to heighten sensory awareness and build descriptive vocabulary organically, right? Yes, I understand it's simpler for you to just create a list and give it to the students and then have them apply it. But it doesn't create that interest. They're not driven to think about and be curious about this if somebody just gives them that list. So we want them to be curious. We want them to be engaged in the lesson. We want them to be active in their lesson. So here we have station 1. It is an image dive. So we can examine landscape photographs, artwork, and make their own list of words. What would you hear, smell, or feel? Push beyond just what you see. Number 2 is a mystery object. This is always a fun one. So we find a hidden object, either in a bag or a box, but something that they cannot see. They just have to feel it, right? This really gets their senses going, and they need to then describe it using only sensory language. We cannot just simply say, oh, it's a pine cone, or oh, it's a shell. No, what do you feel? What do you smell? What do you hear, right? Those kinds of things. Then we have soundscapes. This is always a fun one. They can put on their headphones and they can listen to different sounds and sketch the scene. So now we're adding not only our sound lesson, but we're also incorporating art. And then number 4 is a word bank builder. So sort a collection of descriptive words into categories, right? So now we're working on categorizing all the different words and sounds that they've been learning in their in their exploration. Then we'll apply, right? We'll apply the lesson from sensing to writing. So here the students will select one writing task that allows them to apply their sensory discoveries. Each option provides structure while honoring student choice and creativity. So a sensory paragraph describing a place using all 5 senses. Number 2, a postcard from a place. So they can draw a postcard and use vivid sensory details to help the reader experience the place through their words. Another way to do the postcard or the sensory paragraph is to have your students sit back to back, right? One student has the paper and the pen. The other student is doing an oral practice of a sensory image in their head, right? So here they're working in pairs, but one is talking, the other is listening, and they're drawing what they are listening to their peers say. That's a great way to do a postcard from the place. Zoom in description. Choose one small detail from a place, like when you're looking at a field or a forest, right? Choosing one tree, maybe the tree that has a bird nest in it or has an owl hole, right? So zooming in on one specific part of the picture and describing it with extreme sensory precision, making the ordinary extraordinary, is to take a bland sentence like the park was nice and rewriting it, adding in more sensory describing words. We then go back to our reflection checkpoint, shaping the instruction. So here the students share excerpts in small groups and respond to reflection prompts. Which descriptions create the strongest mental image and why? Where does the writing need more clarity or detail? And what sensory categories are we using most or least? So the teacher will circulate, listening deeply and identifying patterns based on what students reveal. Instruction adjusts, perhaps highlighting effective examples, addressing common gaps in sensory variety, or challenging advanced writers to experiment with figurative language. Again, the mini lesson emerges from student work, not a pre-planned script, right? The teacher isn't going to say, okay, at this point, I'm going to be teaching this section. No, she's going to be listening to the students' reflections, deciding where those gaps are, and then doing a short review with the students, keeping again in mind age +2. So what makes these lessons finish? It builds curiosity through learning. The students are thinking before the teacher is explaining. There's choice and collaboration, so autonomy and agency. It's a low resource, high meaning task. It's reflective, driven, and the teacher is adapting responsibly. How does this connect with CBC for my CBC viewers? It has a competency-driven hook. It is student-led with exploration. It has peer reflection. It has real-world application and visible thinking. This is how CBC becomes practical and joyful, not another checklist to manage, but a framework that unleashes meaningful student-centered learning. What about the role as a teacher throughout this whole process? The teacher removes herself from being the director or the smartest in the class or the know-it-all in the class to being a designer of learning. Finnish-style planning fundamentally reshapes the teacher's role, right? We're no longer the primary one delivering the content. Instead, we are just creating an outline and allowing the students to direct their learning, allowing them to go on a rabbit trail if they want, giving them brief guidelines, an outline, giving them the learning outcomes. This is what I want you to learn. How can you learn that? Keeping that focus, right? Driving that focus. So teachers will create conditions for exploration, pose meaningful questions to help facilitate deeper thinking, observe and respond. Gather those artifacts so that there doesn't need to be exams, quizzes, or worksheets. And celebrating discovery by highlighting insights and making learning visible. Students do the intellectual heavy lifting. This doesn't mean teachers work less. It means they work differently, more strategically, with a greater impact. So my next steps for you are to just think about this a little bit. Review in your mind, reflect on your lesson planning. What small shifts in your lesson planning this week could help students enter learning through curiosity? Maybe just adding a hook before you get into the lesson and allowing them to have a discussion. Just try to begin with one small change. For example, could you begin one lesson with a question instead of the objective? Could students explore a concept before you explain it? Could you offer a choice in how students demonstrate understanding using a choice board? Or could you pause for reflection mid-lesson to allow it to guide you into what comes next? So your reflection moves on to your next steps, which gives them, the students, agency. Finnish education isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Each small shift compounds over time, transforming both your teaching and your students' learning. Start where you are. Begin today. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week. We will work on assessments the Finnish way. Have a great week.